This short video here is on the booming immigrant industry into Ireland. Now, we start off with one of the Irish criminals and one of the immigrant victims. This poor woman came from the Philippines to be with her parents, and an Irish scumbag, fueled by drugs, supplied by either Irish or foreign criminals, sexually assaulted and murdered her. The Irish people I know were very upset about this young woman's fate, and she's one of the victims of immigration, more so because she had wanted to stay in her own country. People like her, unfortunately, are not what immigration is all about. Now, a whole pile of, I presume, Ukrainian and Lithuanian and Romanian scumbags are going around raping fellow immigrants and have them in the sex slave industry. They, overall, are not an advantage to Ireland, to Romania, Ukraine or anywhere else, and Ireland and the world would be better off without them. But to say anything against these people is to be accused of all kinds of crimes like xenophobia and, of course, Islamophobia and so on. Simple point is, a lot of these people are scum, and more of them, of course, are being exploited. As somebody said to me, immigration is great. You can get your car washed for 50 cents. So that's how a lot of people see immigration, and in fact how the Irish mindset has been changed to see other people as chattels, and what Oliver Cromwell said about the Irish, hewers of wood and drawers of water, or is it drawers of water and hewers of wood, whatever it is. Essentially, very low paid slaves. And a lot of immigrants and Irish people or British people in England are working for what's little more than slave wages. Thanks to the Thatcher-Reagan legacy, which is in full bloom in Ireland under the Varadkar regime of Fine Gael and the various pro-NATO characters like Shane Ross and Catherine Zabone, who were in that regime. Here we have part of the new industry is this Muslim woman, an immigrant. I'm sure, well, we can't say, but she says she was fired from Specsavers after one Muslim terrorist attack and before another one. Now, she got 12,000 euros for her trouble. It seems to me on the evidence, but I'm not the judge and I don't have the whole lot of it, that she was fired because she was incompetent. So Muslims or any other immigrants are able to say that they're being discriminated against because they're incompetent. In universities, a lot of the foreign students, not the Chinese primarily, have lowered standards because they're simply not up to it, and if you don't let them through, you are being discriminatory. And in fact, these not so bright people are being encouraged and subsidised to go into university and the workplace and so on, and woe betide you if you say anything about them. So they can essentially set their own rules, and solicitors, as in this case, are feeding off their grievances, real and alleged. Other immigrants, like this poor woman here, was murdered by fellow immigrants. This is a common occurrence because when you throw the doors open to everybody, the scum are generally near the top of the line, and people like her are, suffer the consequences, get killed either by immigrants or by native Irish or British people. The Muslim issue is particularly important because behind them is a lot of financial muscle from the Maktoum Foundation, the Muslim Brotherhood and so on. So here we have a university is afraid to debate anything about these people because it's supposed to reek of Islamophobia. So what's happening is this Trojan Horse, a lot of it under the Muslim Brotherhood, more of it under the CIA, are allowed to come into Ireland and essentially set up networks that nobody is allowed question. In Trinity College we have the situation Dr. Ali Salim, a notorious leading member of the Klonsky Mosque, which is the headquarters of the Muslim Brotherhood in Europe, is hired to teach Arabic, something he is not academically qualified to do. He is allowed rant and rave about genetic mutilation, how it has to be imposed. He says he is wrongly interpreted as regards that. He's on the television lambasting Muslim leaders, respected Muslim leaders not connected with the Muslim Brotherhood, and this character is given a plum job in Trinity College and a PhD. Whether there's money under the table there or not, we don't know. I do know elsewhere Saudi Arabia pays huge amounts to universities and its lazy students are given easy rides because the university fears financial retaliation from Saudi Arabia. Also in Trinity College now we see Muslim students go in and are complaining they're being discriminated against because the lecturer apparently in this case is not kowtowing to them and is trying to raise certain legal points. But the Muslims, no doubt backed by the Muslim Brotherhood, are pushing this agenda so that they have to be an imperium in imperio, a little empire within the empire, and nobody is allowed to criticise them or their very reactionary and medieval ways. As we will go into the history of that in another video, but not here. So we have these people playing the victim. Myra Hindley, one of the most notorious killers ever to emerge from an Irish-British background, she posthumously claims that she was a victim, and of course any Irish or British person of a certain age will know what a monster she was. But she, like these people, claims to be the victim, which we have a situation where homeless people are allowed to go, rob, do whatever they like, and they are the victims, and the lawyers, when they're not defending or making money off immigration, are paid very handsomely along with the barristers to defend these serial criminals. 755 million there for a handful of Irish firms. They're the people who are essentially milking the system, and chaos suits them. Chaos by the homeless, chaos by immigrants, chaos in every single way. As long as there's the taxpayer to pay for it, all is good. Here's another Muslim immigrant. Now, what's interesting about this alleged ISIS murderer who murdered a Japanese person is that happened in Dundalk on the Irish border, and of course the Muslim community were straight out to distance themselves from his activities. But the reality is that in Dundalk, a small border town, the Muslims have invited extreme Islamic jihad recruiters to preach at their mosques. They refuse to integrate, and then they try to distance themselves when one of their members follows ISIS's rules and murders an innocent Japanese immigrant. And of course some of the nutcase politicians in Ireland said that there were two victims of this Islamic ISIS attack: the Japanese guy who was killed, and the Muslim community. In fact, the two primary victims, was obviously the Japanese person, but because the Japanese are law-abiding and because they're not a constituency, there's not many Japanese immigrants, they don't really matter to these left-wing nutcases, alleged left-wingers. And the other thing was two Irish people were stabbed by the same ISIS terrorist, but they don't figure because they are not the target audience of these left-wing opportunists who cheered on the Islamic ISIS takeover of Libya, backed by NATO, who supported ISIS in Syria, and who are total opportunists, if not simple CIA, MI6 agents in all of this. The government, for their own reasons, they want to bring even more immigrants into the country from Britain, even though the capital, Dublin, has a major shortage of housing and so on in this boom-bust cycle that benefits the few, like Catherine Zabone, a minister in the Irish government who got in because she's a lesbian, and who is milking the system, charging outrageous travel and other expenses, and who shamelessly tells the Irish people that there's nothing wrong with her overcharging for expenses. Now, people like Catherine Zabone, I think, should be deported as a matter of urgency. They bring nothing to the table, and the hard-working immigrants who suffer, who get killed, whose grief we don't want to go into, they should be encouraged. But just like the Irish people or anybody else, they don't really matter to the Catherine Zabones and Leo Varadkars and Ruth Coppingers and Richard Boyd Barretts, who are milking the system in their various ways.